SFX. Gavel slams. Subtle cough. Tense_narrator. Judge Thomas Whitaker didn't frown, didn't meet Jim's eyes. He read the verdict like filing paperwork. 6 years at Southfield Correctional Facility. Jim didn't protest, didn't argue. He just bowed his head, gripping the backpack strap like it was the last thread tying him to the past. SFX. Door opening, footsteps echo in prison hallway. Attorney Evelyn stood frozen. She tried to follow the old soldier with her eyes, but everyone else had already turned away. Narrator. No one saw. That as Jim turned away, his eyes were red. Not from the sentence, but because for the first time he truly felt invisible. SFX. Steel doors clanging open, heavy boots on concrete. Narrator. Southfield wasn't a correctional facility. It was a place where memory goes to die. Jim was welcomed by Warden Carl Jennings with a sneer and contempt in his eyes. Old trash like you should just die quietly. Another guard, Brad Keller, tore up the intake file. Just another piece of garbage. SFX. Clothes hitting the floor. Cold water spraying. Jim was forced to strip under sneering stares. His body trembled. Not from the cold, but from humiliation. His backpack was yanked from his grip. Keller kicked it into a corner, dust rising. This junk means nothing in here. Narrator. And for the first time since the war, Jim trembled. Not from bombs, but from honor being crushed by those wearing the same uniform. SFX. Zipper tearing open, small items clattering on concrete. Narrator. That old backpack had followed Jim from the battlefield to the streets. Now, it lay crushed, deformed beneath the guard's boot. They ripped it open. The contents spilled out, a scratched silver medal, a faded photo 6 smiling soldiers beneath the desert sun, a wrinkled letter, never sent. Brad picked up the medal, scoffing. Smells like yesterday's glory. He tossed it in the trash like scrap metal. Jim quietly knelt down, gathering his thingshans, trembling. His eyes didn't blink. He wasn't angry. He was silently shattered. Narrator. To them, it was garbage. But to Jim, it was proof that, once, he mattered to this world. SFX. Prison alarm bell. Echoing footsteps. Heavy door slamming shut. Narrator. Jim didn't fight. Didn't speak. He lived in the corner of his cell, like a shadow. Every morning, he folded that torn backpack, like tending to a piece of his own broken body. No friends, no visitors. Just cold walls and flickering fluorescent lights like dying breath. Then came Leon Martinez, a young inmate. At first, he thought Jim was just some oddball. But the more he watched, the harder it was to look away. Leon, why do you hold that backpack like it holds your whole life? Narrator. He didn't know that inside that bag wasn't just a past, but a memory that could change the future of this entire courtroom. SFX. Papers flipping, soft music, with an investigative pulse. Narrator. Attorney Evelyn Brooks didn't give up. She started digging into Jim's military past. At the Veterans Archive, she uncovered a faded report. Alpha 7 Unit, Al-Basra, 2006. Below it, James Donovan successfully rescued 8 soldiers during enemy ambush. Subtle music swell, hinting a breakthrough, and between the pages a scrawled, barely legible line. One severely wounded lieutenant pulled from burning vehicle by Donovan. Evelyn zoomed in on the name of that soldier. Her eyes widened, fingers froze on the smudged handwriting. Narrator. Thomas Whitaker, the very judge who sentenced Jim, was the man he had saved that night. SFX. Courthouse intercom, heels echoing in hallway, music tightening like a noose. Narrator. A special hearing was reopened. The courtroom was packed. No one understood why this minor case had drawn so much attention. Jim entered, same worn prison uniform, same torn backpack in his hands. Evelyn stood up, holding a file. Your Honor, The defendant has something to say." The room fell silent. Jim nodded. He spoke slowly, hoarsely, as if dragging words through the smoke of war. "That year, I pulled a lieutenant from a burning APC. Bombs were still going off. I never saw his face. Just remember the fear in his eyes." A short pause. Music tightens narrator. From the bench, Judge Whitaker froze. His hands began to tremble, because those eyes were his own. SFX. Tense music rising, slow heartbeat, pen dropping to desk. Narrator. Judge Thomas Whitaker sat still, his face turned pale. His pen slipped from his fingers and clattered to the table. The courtroom was so quiet, you could hear someone breathing hard. He stood up, walked toward Jim, step by step, as if wading through memory. "Whitaker. It was you. You pulled me from the flames. I never knew your name." A pause. Music drops to soft heartbeat. Evelyn wiped away tears. Jim bowed his head, said nothing. His grip on the backpack tightened, as if it had just been lifted back up by dignity itself. Narrator. The man they condemned was the one this entire system owed a life to. SFX. Deep breath. Documents pushed aside. Emotional music swelling, not dramatic, just deeply felt. Narrator. Judge Thomas Whitaker took off his glasses. For the first time, the cold shell of law fell away. He stood before the court, turned to the public, voice trembling. "I sentenced a hero without knowing I'm only alive because of him." The entire room held its breath. Whitaker bowed deeply before Jim. "I'm sorry, not just for the wrong verdict, but for forgetting the one thing that matters most: gratitude." SFX. A single clap. Then more, growing louder. Narrator. Jim said nothing. He just nodded slow and sure, like a man who had finally reclaimed the name that had been lost in the nation's memory. SFX. Warm music rising gently. Footsteps in hallway. Soft wind blowing. Narrator. The day Jim Donovan was released, the air was cold, but his hands were strangely warm. As he received his backpack, wiped clean, and placed before him with respect, he opened it in front of dozens of witnesses. One by one, he pulled them out. The metal, now polished bright. The photo, laminated anew. The old letter, now reprinted on the cover of a magazine titled "The Silent Hero." SFX. Camera clicks. Soft voices in awe. A moment. A photo. A symbol. Narrator. That backpack was no longer a drifter's burden. It was proof that honor can be brought back to life. SFX. Gate opening, morning birds, hopeful music, gently rising. Narrator. Months later, Leon Martinez, Jim's fellow inmate, was released. He wasn't the same. Leon never went back to old ways. He stood before a tiny classroom in a poor neighborhood, telling stories to the kids. "I met an old man once. He didn't speak much, but he taught me what prison never could." SFX. Children listening silently. Leon reached into his pocket, pulled out a small, neatly folded printout. A photo of Jim, sitting by his backpack, eyes lifted toward a gray sky. Beneath it, a handwritten line. "Don't forget the names of those who kept you alive." Narrator. Jim's story lived on, through a man who once thought he'd already died inside. SFX. Soft wind through flags, distant bird song, solemn music, reverent and still. Narrator. One late autumn morning, Jim Donovan stood alone before the war memorial. Sunlight touched the carved names on cold granite. He wore his old military jacket, not for pride, but for remembrance. In his hands, the backpack, no longer torn, no longer stained. It had been mended, cleaned, like a piece of honor made whole again. Jim knelt, placed the backpack at the base of the wall. His fingers traced familiar names, the men he once called brothers. SFX. Wind rises softly, music lifts with it. Narrator. No one took a picture, no one filmed it, but in that moment, Both memory and history bowed to a man who had once been forgotten. SFX. Warm piano builds gently, heartbeat drums rising like new breath. Narrator. James Donovan never asked to be praised. He only wanted to be seen, because no glory lives forever if no one remembers the name that held it. In this country, we call it Veterans Day. But do we truly remember, or just the ones in polished uniforms? Music pauses briefly. Soft wind remains narrator. Every man like Jim is a piece of our collective memory. When they're forgotten, our nation's honor fades with them. Justice for veterans doesn't just tell stories. We reclaim justice and memory for those who've lost both. Music swells again, hopeful, powerful, narrator. Share this story if you believe that no one who served this country should be erased in silence. Say their names, remember their faces, protect their memory, the way they once protected you.